Welcome to ClassicSinai.com. The class you're about to hear is one of 26 free all-star Jewish classics available to help you live a more vibrant, meaningful, and fulfilling life.
Gentlemen, this is not a movie. Real life. One of the first things we want to get a handle on is the terrible difficulty that the average Westerner, not mentioning any names here, have in being able to tell the difference between a movie and real life, between illusions and reality. Now, just give a brief review. The Matrix. Start with the basics. Artificial intelligence was created by human beings to solve problems for us, and the artificial intelligence created a computer construct, the Matrix, a construct of our present-day world, and threw a hardwire directly into the brain of each individual human being, fed it to us humans who were in reality kept in incubators and used for their energy output as a power source for the artificial intelligence. In other words, our reality exists only in our minds. Everything we experience, everything we do, it's all just a dream. But a small band of freed human beings live in the real world and fight against the subjugation of mankind by the machines. Their ultimate goal is to destroy the Matrix and end the domination of the machines. How do they go about this? They find a man within the Matrix, Thomas Anderson, otherwise known as Neo, who develops the ability to defeat the artificial intelligence within the Matrix, begin the process of restoring man to his rightful place as the sentient thinking species on the planet. Okay. A young man at Aisha Torah asked you to suggest that I see it. And after seeing it once, I've seen it twice, after seeing it once, I figured that within the obvious limitations of the fact that the movie is not Torah, it was made by two, what was the name of the brothers, Larry and, Larry and Andy Wachowski, written and directed by them. Within the range of those limitations, it was like the ultimate Aisha Torah movie. The ultimate Aisha Torah movie, made even better by the fact that we didn't make it. Because when we make it, say, well, that's what you think. A movie made revolving around certain basic concepts at Aish, that we learn about and talk about at Aish, which the very fact that it was made by Gentiles and succeeded among universal, that is, say, non-Jewish audiences, tells us really reached people. Okay, so what's the essential model? What's the essential model? About 20 minutes into the movie, 20, 30 minutes into the movie, Neo comes in contact with, remember who? Morpheus. Clarify for me, I'm not exactly sure. What happened? He offered him the choice of a red pill and a blue pill. When did he tell him what he had to know about existence? Beforehand or afterwards? Afterwards. First how did he introduce the pills? Before giving him the pills, what did he say?
That once you take it, you can't go back. It's something, it's a decision you gotta take. Go with it. Don't go back.
He said, sometimes you're not sure if you're awake or still dreaming. I don't know if you want to see what I have to show you. Morpheus says, what is it about life? What is it about the concept of fate that you don't like? He said, I don't like the idea that I'm not in control of my life. He said, the world has been pulled over your eyes to blind you It's a little play on words. Instead of the wool pulled over your eyes, the world. Pulled over your eyes to blind you. You've been born into bondage. Before he tells him what he has to know, what did he do? He said, I have here 2 pills, a red pill and a blue pill. If you take the blue pill, you'll go to sleep and you'll wake up thinking it was all a dream, and you go back to who you were before. If you take the red pill, what happens?
Go all the way down to the rabbit hole. You wake up to reality.
Yeah, we pop you out of your pod. You didn't tell him that, but we pop you out and you're in reality. But it could be a very difficult journey. Now, this was before he showed him what the world really looks like as opposed to the one he sees. It reminds me about the guy comes to Aisha Torah and a few weeks into being here says, hey, it's neat, reality and gee. What did Neo do? He said, I'm offering you the 2 pills. What did he do? He took the red pill. He immediately reached for the red pill. What do you think, gentlemen? If you offered it to each individual in the world that the movie represents, what do you think the majority of people would do?
Take the blue.
Think, Daniel? What would the majority of people do?
I think most people would probably take the blue pill.
Most people would take the blue pill. But in case you haven't noticed, most people would take the blue pill. But it would be a life so meaningless that it wouldn't be worth watching the movie. You can only watch the movie of the guy who takes the red pill. Because the other person doesn't count. It's as if he doesn't exist. So they make the movie of the guy who takes the red pill. That was only about, the movie's over 2 hours, I think. What's the movie time? Anybody here? How long? It's definitely over 2 hours. Stay in Wonderland and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. Now, what hit me about that before we go back to the movie is that something that happened about 10 years before that. And it taught me something that I didn't know for 10 years. They didn't understand for 10 years. It's about 10 years ago that we had a rabbi at Aisha Torah. I'm not going to use a lot of names here. People figure out a lot of stuff. He says, listen, this 18-year-old kid, and his family's from, and he finished high school. He came to Israel for a year in yeshiva. He didn't want to come. His parents kind of pressed him into it. It's December now. He wants to leave in January. It's just not for him, learning. It's not for him. So I got him to come to Discovery, and then he'll talk to you. All right. So he goes to Discovery, sit down and says, so what do you want to talk about? He says, I don't have anything to talk about. He says, well, do you have any questions about it, Okay. He says, no. He says, I know there's a God. I know He gave a Torah. I don't want to sit and learn. I don't want to do all that stuff. He didn't say whether to keep Shabbos or not, but I don't want to do that. It doesn't give me any pleasure. So he goes, gee, that's pretty good, with all the people saying, gee, how do I know there's a God? I mean, this guy's very straight about it. He knows there's a God. He knows He gave a Torah. He doesn't want to do it. So we talked for a while. And as is often the case, I came up with an idea that's just, based on talking to the guy. I said, okay, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, you just don't enjoy it. It's true. It would be, wouldn't it be valuable if you did enjoy it? I said, sure. I said, okay. I said, now remember, I'm not about to sue the Wachowski brothers here. But it was 10 years ago. And I said, well, what if I were to give you a pill? What if I were to give you a pill? And if you took this pill, you would enjoy learning. Nothing else would change. You would just enjoy learning. Would you take the pill? said, wow. I don't know. So I don't understand. You said it's true, it'll be good for you, but you don't enjoy it. If you took the pill, you'd enjoy it. Would you take the pill? He says, I don't know, I honestly can't say. So I got up, offered my hand, said, Baruch, lots of luck. If you ever decide you want to take the pill, give me a buzz. And he took off, that's it. I saw the kid once. That was in December. Following August, I was in Meir Sharim area, came out of a bookstore, a forum store. I heard somebody say, Rabbi Berger. I see this kid crossing the street to me. Last time I'd seen the kid, was, suede yarmulke, polo shirt, stuff like that. Now this kid, I don't remember where I knew him. White shirt, black pants, stuff like that. And he comes over, and you slowly can remember. I remember seeing this guy a while back. And he tells me his name. Oh yeah, right, you are. So I remember, I saw him in December. He was supposed to leave in January. I said, and now it's August. I said, did you come? You back in Israel for summer, like visiting for summer? He says, no, I've been here the whole time. Where were you? And he mentions the yeshiva he was at. Wow, that's amazing. What are you doing next year? He says, next year I'm going to Mir. Going to Mir? All of a sudden I remembered everything. The whole story came back. He said, you're going to Mir? Gives me this big smile and says, yeah, I took the pill. Wow, it's fantastic. That's amazing. I wished him a lot of luck, and he went his way, I went my way. Walking down Meir Sharim, 2 minutes later, I stopped and said, what the heck's the pill? I go to Reb Noach and ask him, tell him the whole story. Well, the pill's in reality. Come on, what did he do? What did he do? I have no idea. No idea. Until I saw the movie. When I saw the movie, I understood it. What did he take the red pill for? Knowing what's true. Is that everybody in the world can take the pill, and everyone in the world can enjoy it. Every person has to figure it out themselves. You have one reason, he has something else. Everybody can take the pill, and everyone can enjoy it. So he takes the red pill, and he's told, right, that the machines took over. You are now in a pod, with things wired into your brain, information given, and we're going to break you out. You're going to be part of reality. Okay, so what's the essential message of the movie? What is the essential message, gentlemen?
Free choice.
Every movie is about free choice.
Searching for reality.
Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer is about free choice. Every movie. A person's faced with choices. If he isn't, there's no movie. Romeo and Juliet. You're always faced with free choice.
More to the extent like free will, in the sense like before he couldn't choose, he was stuck in this world of like dreams. He couldn't get out and see it really like. He couldn't choose to do something with his life. It was just like programmed.
Right. So what was the point of the movie?
This reality we're dying for.
I think that's valuable, but it's more complex. I want to get to a more simpler, basic element. I think what you're saying is, I'm sorry, what's the first name?
We're fighting for. We're fighting.
Even more basic.
Do you want to know reality?
No questions. Not the question. What's the basic premise of the movie before we get to the question?
So much of our lives are illusions.
That most human beings think they're walking and they're talking, and in fact they're just sitting there in a pod being used by the Matrix for its own self-interest. That you may think you're taking care of yourself, but in fact you're just sitting in a pod serving the Matrix, and when your life is over, you're going to have nothing because you spent whatever you have, in fact, running after illusions, which help the Matrix, but doesn't do you any good at all.
Or humanity.
What?
And it doesn't do humanity as a whole any good either.
But I would want to look at it as each individual, because I don't think humanity exists. It's each individual asking the question. You can ask it as an individual, you can't ask it as humanity. Henry David Thoreau making the statement, the mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation. Most human beings are being used by other elements of life in which they're led to think they're taking care of themselves, but they're not. So before we go back to the different things that go on in terms of Neo, what is the Matrix? It's a construct people think they're in. The fact that you can dream, right, and then you wake up and realize you thought you were there, but really you were sitting in your own little pod in your room, means that this can go on indefinitely. You can wake up and then you just, I think it's a Calvin and Hobbes series, where Calvin has a terrible dream, and he wakes up, wow, that was terrible. And then, boy, that was a terrible dream, but now I'm up. He wakes up and gets dressed, and he walks out of the front door of his house, and he falls right over into nothingness. And then he wakes up again. And he wakes up again. But now he doesn't want to get out of bed. The Matrix is the world of illusion that squeezes the energy out of you for the good of the artificial intelligence. What is the artificial intelligence? In a world of overwhelming illusion, there's a world of reality where most people are stuck in illusions.
It's a horror.
Mm-hmm. In our terms, we can discuss it a little later, but first, in the movie itself, how did the artificial intelligence come into being?
Through man.
What?
Through man.
Right, so it isn't nature, because God created nature.
Society.
We're looking for
It's not society. Society created the machine. So what's the machine? Society created artificial intelligence. Did you see it then? Did you see the movie?
5 times.
Yeah, you have to a number of times to catch. But why did society create artificial intelligence?
Like things easier.
To make it easier for us. Human beings created artificial intelligence to make it easier for us, and it took over. We created it to work for us, now we work for it. Now, there are many ways you can see this. I'm not making it any one way. But to me, and don't get me wrong, I've never been accused of being a leftist, or a left-wing pinko, But to me, what fits best is the economy.
As the Matrix itself?
Well, let's figure out if it's the artificial intelligence or the Matrix. Our economy. We create these machines to make life more comfortable, to make us more prosperous. Now we are being squeezed to produce for the economy. You finish college and you are, for the rest of your life, either a producer or a consumer. You either produce what the economy sells, and then when you finish, you go home and with the money you earned, consume what the economy does. And then you produce what the economy sells and then consume what they produce. Okay? You produce it and then you consume it and you keep it going. And as a result, let's say you have less time for your soul, less time for your wife, less time for your kids. But that's okay because somehow you're part of the system where you produce and consume. And in the end, when you die, you have nothing left for yourself, but the economy was well served by your having gone through the system. Daniel?
Just like with the economy, especially today, how there's nothing that even backs the economy. Like it used to be there was gold for every dollar, now that doesn't even exist. So in a sense, it's the illusion itself, just like the economy, in essence, is sustained by an illusion, because you can give me these paper dollars and tell me, okay, really it's like the trust of the person, it's the trust of the system, it's the illusion.
It's the illusion that this person buys into.
Right, that actually sustains
Yeah,
it.
if we wouldn't buy into it, it wouldn't work. But don't worry, it will.
But just like the people in the pods, if they were actually to wake up in the pod somehow to the illusion and they all popped out of the pod and suddenly it wouldn't feed the matrix anymore and then the whole construct would collapse. Because they are the actual energy of the construct.
And so Morpheus says, most people are not ready to be unplugged. Most human beings are so dependent on the system they will fight to protect it. You understand? What it's saying is, don't worry about it. As a matter of fact, one of the major differences between the movie and the real world is the unbelievable the Matrix in the real world has much more confidence than the one in the movie. In the movie, if you catch on to what it's doing, it sends agents after you to kill you. And they can. But in the world we really live in, the Matrix is so confident. It says, go ahead. You want to tell people? Build Aisha Torah. Go on the internet. Go ahead. See if it's going to make a darn bit of difference to me. In the movie, the Matrix is a bit, the machine is a bit concerned. In the real world, so go ahead, won't make a difference. Most people will stay plugged in and will take care of me.
I mean, there's, that's not how it is in some parts of the world, like in China and some countries where the tiniest little, there's just this thing in China with the Falun Gong movement. I don't know if you heard about it. But I mean, here you got China with 1 billion people, and you've got like a few thousand people who are taking part in a very, very, very peaceful activity, and there was a lot of fear, and they went after them.
Oh, that's their Matrix. Ours has no such fear.
Ours
in China, they must have the Chinese government has a very primitive one, and so they're worried. In America, it doesn't worry. America says, go ahead. And most people are going to stay plugged in.
They're just more sneaky about it, maybe.
Who?
In the States, the government in the States.
Again, much more confident, much more powerful.
Right. I don't know if I believe they're not concerned, though, just because they don't come out and stamp on it, but they might try to pull the rug out from underneath or something. That's another issue.
What else is going on in the movie?
The attitude is that even though they're sitting in the pod, whatever, if his body gets affected or damaged, then his physical body gets damaged, which shows that there is definitely a link. Even though he's in a dream, he's still getting hurt.
It's connected to his mind.
Right, but you see that his physical body was getting damaged as well.
Yeah. If you're killed in the Matrix, do you die here? What was the answer?
Yeah, of course.
The body cannot live without the mind. Body can't live without the mind. Keep in mind that the people who put the movie together for the Eritrea, they think the mind is the highest level. They don't understand the mind is the highest level of the body. The mind is the highest level of the body, but it's not your soul. Your body cannot live without your soul. But your soul, of course, can live without your body. What's the concept of Adam eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil? What did God say to Adam? If you eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, what's going to happen to you? You're going to die. Now remember, God's an infinite giver. And therefore, God says, if you eat from that tree, you're going to have to die. Why? But we know that to ourselves as children, God punishes us. To ourselves as adults, God does the tikkun. He takes care of us. What is the value of death? If you make a mistake called eating the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, why are you rectified through death? Because one of the understandings is the tree of the knowledge of good and evil really means the tree of the intimate relationship between good and evil. The word knowledge is used in the Bible there shortly thereafter, and Adam knew his wife Eve, and it's talking about an intimate sexual relationship. The tree of the intimate sexual relation, the tree of the intimate deep relationship between good and evil. He said, right now, before you eat from that tree, I tell you what's good, the snake tells you what's evil. Ever since then, you don't hear from snakes, you rarely hear from God. If you eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, you become a person who can look at evil and really feel it's good. You can look at good and really feel it's evil. A world of massive capacity for illusion, where good, you still know there's such a thing as good and evil, but it doesn't identify anything in particular. You still feel there's a good and evil, but you can identify anything as good and anything as evil. And depending on what level of illusion you've placed yourself, you can call everything total opposites. The concept that because of one's evil inclination having taken over, God transmitted Torah as its antidote, is the concept that we live in a world where it is so impossible for you to hammer a way through and figure out what is intrinsically good and what is intrinsically evil, that God says, I'm going to transmit a Torah. I'm going to give you the specs of creation, how I created you, and based on how I created you, to tell you what it is you can do to connect to me, that's good, what it is you can do to disconnect me, and that's evil. But that from the time we ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, without Torah, you can call anything good and anything evil. And that's why no matter what act you can conceive of, so evil and vicious and depraved, you will find that there are whole civilizations will call that same act perfectly okay and even good. Gladiator fights and Holocaust. Because in fact, while there is an intrinsic good or evil, we've so messed up our ability to be aware of it, or so stuck in illusion, that we can call anything good or anything evil.
How do we mess this up? How did we mess it up?
Eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil.
Why would they ever choose that?
We didn't know.
Why would he have chosen to eat from it?
Because it's just totally confusing. Why would they want to be confused?
He wasn't aware of the consequences, was it? I mean, he just...
Well, it's obviously was aware theoretically. I don't want to get too caught in that because I want to get back to the Matrix. One element that I've heard, one way of explaining it, is that God said to Adam, don't eat from this tree, don't eat from that tree. Now we know the Talmud says there are two types of people in the world, a righteous person and a Baal Tshuva. If they're both in the same place, one's right when it's tzaddik all his life and one's a Baal Tshuva, which is closer to God? Argument, differences of opinion. It comes out, the Gemara comes out saying that a Baal Tshuva is greater than a tzaddik. Why? Because he had to put much more energy into getting close to God. The person who sins and does tshuva takes much more energy, which is why most sinners never make it. That a Baal Tshuva represents the approximately 1%, less than 1% of the Jewish people who will make it back. The other 99% over the next 100 years are likely, if things don't change, to be part of the Gentile world 100 years from now. Just as if in the year 1800 there were X number of Jews who were essentially 99.9% Shomer Mitzvot, that now in the year 2000, 200 years later, the vast majority of their descendants are either non-observant Jews or Goyim. Baal Tshuva is much greater than a tzaddik, reflected in the fact that most people will never make it. That it's easier to be a tzaddik than to be Baal Tshuva. And therefore the concept is that Adam said, look, God says, don't eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. I now know, says Adam, that there are two ways of becoming close to God. Number one, doing what he says, or number two, sinning and doing tshuva. And he chose the second, more creative way, which is why God did not throw him out of the garden. Remember, by choosing to eat from that tree, he chose to subject himself to illusion so massively that even if he fights his way out, there will still be parts of him that are stuck in illusion. And therefore, why is death the only way you can get out of it? If in fact you have a body and a soul, and that, remember, before the sin, Adam identified himself as a soul in a body, reflected by the fact that he wasn't wearing any clothes. Daniel, do you ever go horseback riding?
A couple times.
All right. Were you wearing clothes?
I was.
Was the horse wearing clothes? Pants? A shirt? A tie? No?
Saddle, especially for me.
No, yeah, special for you. What about him? No shirt, no pants? So I'll go up to you, you're on the side. Says, Daniel, aren't you embarrassed? Were you embarrassed?
Was I embarrassed?
Yeah.
Um,
The horse was
completely
naked.
different reasons, actually, but-
The horse was naked. What? Weren't you embarrassed?
You should enjoy it.
Why not?
Actually, this is a completely different subject. I was embarrassed.
Well,
because-
then let's not go to
Okay.
different subjects.
No,
Let's
I was not
focus
embarrassed
then.
because the horse is a horse, and
And it's not what? And it's not you. And it's not you. It's not me. It's my horse. That was Adam before the sin. If I go over to Adam before the sin and say, Adam, you're totally naked. You're not wearing any clothes. He looks down and said, it's not me, that's my horse. He said, I'm a soul. You think of my body, that's my horse. I really appreciate it. I feed it. I take care of it. It takes me where I got to go. But it's not me. You understand? You know there's something wrong with Adam, that as soon as he eats from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, he immediately says, uh-oh, I'm naked. Can you picture? And God saying, they is me. He thinks that's him. God says, how do you know why are you hiding? I'm naked. How do you know you're naked? How do you know that you're naked? Did you eat from the tree I told you not to? See, beforehand he would have said, my horse, and it wouldn't bother him any more than it bothered Daniel. But after he says, I'm naked, he now identified himself not as a soul, but as a body. He identified the me. He identified the self, the me, as I'm naked, the body. Now, do you understand? We are all out to get the most pleasure out of our existence. What's the number one prerequisite? The number one prerequisite is to know who you are. You understand? You want to get the most out of life, but you identify yourself as the body rather than the soul. So you go out and eat the good food, and you go out and you work out in the gym. And of course, you want to project yourself to others as very valuable. So you build up your muscles and you get toned, because you understand, everybody wants to take care of themselves, and everybody wants to project themselves to others as the best possible me. And so you sit there your whole life projecting yourself when it's not you at all. There's a famous story of the wise men of Chelm that illustrates it. Well, one of them illustrates it. Familiar about the stories of the wise men of Chelm? It's a story like that. As if there's a town of morons called Chelm, and there was a town in Poland that the name. And it's like the wise men of Chelm said they're all a bunch of fools. Okay, so the story goes, there's a wise man of Chelm who's in he's at an inn. He's staying in an inn, he's sleeping there, and he says to the innkeeper, listen, I got to wake up 4 a.m. to catch a train in the morning. It's crucial. I cannot afford to miss it. I'm giving you 5 rubles. You got to wake me up 4 a.m. All right, no problem. I'll get you. So he goes to his room. In those days, 5, 10 people sleeping in a room. It's not like a private place. So the guy next to going to sleep next to him is a priest. Well, he's saying, hello, how you doing? Fine, You got, okay, lights out in 5 minutes. All right, so they take off their clothes. Each one puts it on their chair next to their bed and go to sleep. 4 a.m, the innkeeper comes in and wakes up the guy and says, hey, it's 4 a.m. He said to wake you up. And oh, wow, thanks. He gets up. It's pitch black. Everybody else is sleeping. So he's feeling around to put on his clothes. And he forgot which side he put the clothes on. So he went to the chair on the other side of his bed where the priest had his clothes. Now, and you don't know, he's not big on his wife buys him all his clothes. He puts on the clothes and then gets this long thing. It looks black and it's his. And he puts on all his stuff. And hat, some jewelry. I don't remember any of that, but okay. And he goes to the train station, gives him the money, gives him the ticket, says thanks for the ticket. And the ticket agent says, you're welcome, Reverend Father. This Jewish guy, he says, Reverend Father? Huh? Well, by now it's starting to lighten up a little. He goes into the main terminal, the main hall, where they're waiting for the train, and goes to a full-length mirror. What does he see in front of him? Priest's hat, priest's coat, priest. He says, oh my God, what an idiot that innkeeper is. I told him to wake me up, and he went and woke up the priest instead.
Some jokes?
No. Everybody is automatically programmed to get out there and get the most out of life. The number one prerequisite is you got to know who you are. And if you don't know who you are, you go out there, right? Take care of yourself. You eat the food. You work out in the gym. You project yourself, and when it's all over, there's a forcible separation between body and the soul, where the body is eaten by worms, and you have very little left because you're here to get the most out of life, but you don't know who you were. And the concept of the movie is that, you can have the vast majority of humanity out there thinking they're working for themselves. They're working for somebody else, and when it's over, they have nothing. And it's so interesting that the movie can reflect to a general Gentile audience. That's where life could be. Could be. Now, shortly after he was popped out of his pod, he came to be aware of what the world was like. And one time, Neo was laying on his bunk, had this horrible blank look on his face. He's very good at that, Keanu Reeves. And he's laying there looking out in the void and says to Morpheus, "I can't go back, can I?" And Morpheus' response is, "If you could, would you?" And he doesn't answer. I'm not sure at what point, but there, again, I'm not sure what week the average Aisha Torah boy asks that question. But again, seeing this as the ultimate Aisha Torah movie, sometime after the guy takes his red pill here, so everybody sooner or later goes through it. You can't go back, can I? And then, of course, there's Cypher. Anybody remember who Cypher played?
He was the guy who wanted to turn back.
Right?
He was the guy who wanted to go back?
Yeah, he's the guy who was wanting to sell out.
Yeah.
He was going to sell out. Illustrated best by sitting in the restaurant within the Matrix, because nothing was happening. He sits there and he eats his beautiful steak and he says, "I know it's not happening, but it tastes so good." And then he says the ultimate line. The ultimate contention with Aish. What line is that?
Maybe a movie star, something good.
I don't care if it's fake.
Ignorance is bliss. And then, of course, in order to poke real fun at themselves, in order for Hollywood to poke ultimate fun at themselves, it says, "I want to go back to make me somebody real important, like an actor." In other words, who is more important as much as the person in our world who's the master of illusion? I mean, just to let you know, whether you're in the Matrix or not, the real important people are so great that knowing that they're lying to you, you sit down for 2 hours in front of the screen and you laugh and you cry as if it's really happening. They're so good at it that knowing that even that 2 hours is illusion, you really feel the feel. Then you leave, and at least when you leave the movie, you think you're in reality. You're just another level of illusion. But they're so good that knowing you're sitting down to be part of illusion, you still feel as if it's real. You cry if something goes wrong. You feel, boy, these guys are good at illusion. It's, I have to come back to it. Okay. Yeah.
Is it really that we're sitting in illusion, or we've encountered those things before? So we're in touch with that reality. Like, why do we cry in a movie where we see someone dying or whatever? Because we sort of know how to feel. Someone, God forbid, close to us has gone through that same scenario, or a friend, whatever. So you've experienced that reality. So you're more in touch with that. So you're not really in illusion. It's more real to you because it brings up memories of how you've experienced things before.
Or of the previous illusion. But you can feel it even when you know it's not true. Nobody died. What do you do to yourself when you know nobody's feeling bad, nobody died? But you can feel and you want to feel the thing, knowing that nothing's happening. Or when these people, when they show they have a wonderful, loving relationship and you feel so good, even though you know that those two people in real life hate each other's guts. It's like, what are you doing to yourself? Saying, in the knowledge that it's illusion, I still want to feel it as if it's real. That's not a particular commitment to reality. It's a commitment to feeling things whether it's real or not. And we pay these people a lot of money for that. Now, I'm not saying that they're the masters, because it's very clear that if we live in a world where in the last 30 years the illusions have gotten so real that, for example, the divorce rate in the United States has gone from 23% to over 50%. But the divorce rate among those who are masters of illusion, what do we call them? Actors. The divorce rate among actors is 99.8%. So in other words, if you think we are subject to it, the command of the people who work for the Matrix as the greatest masters of illusion, look at the price they're paying for being masters of illusion. They are people who essentially have no serious capacity to invest in real relationships because their lives are such masters of illusion they can be caught in it themselves. That we may laugh when Elizabeth Taylor says the 9th time, "This is the real one," but the problem is she's not. She really believes it. So they're not the Matrix. They're just working for it real well, and they, in return for the money, they pay a very severe price. Yeah, Daniel?
So considering how the good and the evil are so intertwined and so in such close relationship with each other, and on that end I feel like there's kind of the one side of it. Now, how do we know when we're learning Torah and learning things about Torah that, it's still us that are getting tied up in it, like, who knows where we're coming from, that's why we're approaching it, like you said, in order to really gain true pleasure, we have to know who we are first. So if we're not coming from a place from the deepest part inside of us...
How does Neo know that he's not popped into another illusion? How does he know that he's not into another illusion? How do you know that you're really awake now? Gentlemen, how do you know that you're really awake now?
Then you go through whenever you want to achieve something.
What's the first prerequisite to know whether you're really awake?
Pinch yourself.
How do you know? How can you force yourself to wake up when you're in a dream?
You have to first identify your dream.
There's an awareness that there's something else. This person, Neo, beforehand, he had an awareness that there's something else that he wasn't aware of.
How do you wake yourself up from a dream? Or how do you know when you're awake that you're awake?
Try to kill yourself in a dream.
Gentlemen. How do you know when you're awake?
Free choice. There's the organs.
Wouldn't the system make sense?
No. First thing that is required is that you can ask the question. In a dream, it's enough to wake up. First prerequisite is to know. I could be dreaming. It could be a reality. How do I know? Where do I go to test it out? It's enough in a dream to ask the question. You really don't have to go any further.
You can be conscious in a dream that you're dreaming and still be dreaming.
Once you're conscious, you will wake up.
That's not always true. I've been conscious in dreams and not waking.
Again, if you're conscious, then it's not a dream. The dream is that which you think is real. If in the dream you're conscious, then you don't think that's real. Because you're saying it's a dream.
Imagination, man.
But if I become aware in a dream that I'm
That
dreaming,
this isn't real.
and that I'm actually laying in my bed, but doesn't look like my bedroom. You know what I'm saying?
Doesn't matter if it looks like your bedroom. If you know you're not really here.
But yet I'm not waking up. I'm like flying or something.
That's not dreaming.
Double check it. I'm positive that you can't, when you know it's not happening. When your brain kicks that in, it doesn't maintain the alternative.
You're talking about what's called a lucid dream in psychology.
A what?
Knowing that you're dreaming, now you're dreaming. Lucid dreaming.
Lucid dreaming.
I know people who actually have had much more experience with it than me, but I've had glimpses of actually realizing I was dreaming.
I think it's about experience to be another analogy. Like when you know you're being affected by the drug, but you're seeing things anyway.
It's like the idea, somebody asked the Kotzker, what do we do about the fact that God is so hidden from us? God's hiding from us. God's hiding from us. So if we know He's hiding, He's not hidden. That when you know the guy's behind the tree, you hide and seek, and you can't see him. You don't see him, but you know he's behind the tree. He's not hidden. You don't have to see him. You know the person's in the bush. It's not hidden. You don't have to see him. You may say, gee, I don't know. Well, then he's hidden. But if you know he's not hidden, the fact that you don't see him is not relevant.
The confusion is coming from the fact that in the question and the answer, the same word is being used in two different ways. But the guy was asking, what do you do like God? But he said, how do I know that he's there, etc. The guy himself is unsure. He's saying, you're saying that he's there. I suspect it is possible.
So you got to figure out what you're asking.
Right.
Yeah. The first prerequisite to getting out of an illusion is asking yourself, is it a dream or is it a reality? Is it an illusion or is it not? Once you know, it doesn't matter if it continues, you know it's not real. And what is destructive is, while it's not real, you're acting as if it is. It's acting upon you as if you are. Once you know, you can make the decision as to whether you act in a particular way or not. And that's why when Cypher said, I want to go back, he said, I want you to get to the point where I don't know that it's an illusion. Because the illusion is no fun if you know it's an illusion. You have to put me back to the point that I think it's a reality. Because if I stay where I am now, it's not going to do me any good. It's even interesting that in the movie there are two types of people, Bali Tshuva and FFBs. Who are they? Plugged in. The guys who were taken over. Well, the guys who were taken over and they popped themselves out. And then the brothers who escaped, they were never part of it. It's interesting, only the guys who were in it and popped out can be in either place. The other guys just can't figure out how you do it.
They get stuck in the illusion.
They may get stuck there. It's so they can't go back and forth.
Why?
Well, in the movie, because they're not hardwired.
No, but put it in our terms. The world today.
Yeah. Why can't they?
They weren't programmed in. They just have no place in the non-film world, I guess. FFBs just don't have a place in the secular world.
What's the secular world?
It's all one.
What do you mean, secular world?
Yeah, well, that's in terms that ultimately FFB and Balchuva are this close because they're both part of World of Illusion. But to whatever extent the FFB was raised in the Torah world without any connection to the other, he looks at certain things as disgusting and revolting. No, the average FFB, if you can pick, let's say everybody has their own places where they don't have much of a test. If I found out that I was eating a pork chop or a tray of roast beef, I'd barf my guts up just by knowing it. It's just not, well, to the person who was there, he can understand not eating, the importance of not eating. He can understand the pleasure of eating it. To a certain extent, remember, every FFB is a relative dozer, but in there are certain areas where you just can't cross over into illusion. I mean, there's nothing there. There's no point. Right after he pops him out of the pod, what happened with what I don't understand, I saw it twice. As he comes out of the pod, a machine comes over and grabs him and then lets him go. What happened? But why did the machines are obviously on the machine side, why did they let...
No, it was the rescue ship.
What?
He sent from the ship to find out if it's the right guy.
Yeah, the guys, the rebel guys.
Yeah, that they have one of their guys in the...
Remember the... what's his name? Morris Friedman. He said that I'd seen the pod, the fields, where they hatch all the...
Mm-hmm.
So they move around in there.
That they can move around in the reality.
Oh yeah. What happened was
It's a hammer shot.
he popped out of the pod. Some computer thing, must have sensed that this guy popped out, so it cut off all his.
It popped. It seemed to
Popped
just
him,
pop.
and then he went through this tunnel.
Yeah, but before he went through the tunnel.
They released him. The guys from the ship released him. They're the ones who...
They were the ones who, yeah.
They removed the thing. That's why they pulled it off.
Yeah, they
But you didn't see anybody else pulling things out. What you saw is they popped. You didn't see there was something else.
Right, they popped. And then didn't he go?
Yeah, and then he was dumped. But before he was dumped, that thing was standing. The machine grabbed him and then let him go.
He started swimming around inside the pod.
Yeah, well, the pills. The implication is that the pill woke him up. The red pill got to the point of waking him up.
It's like they popped out of him because he was wrong.
And the machine then some machine grabs him and then lets him go.
He climbed out. He climbed out
Who
of
gra-
himself.
No, somebody grabbed him.
Put the thing on his
She
neck.
did the thing in his neck first.
Yeah, that's
and
what I'm
that's what
saying.
popped up all the
Yeah.
Yeah,
But he busted himself out of the pod first in order to get there.
yeah.
Remember he busted himself out and then he looked up his head and said, "Whoa, this is bizarre."
Once they pick him up, and this is very much an idea of a this world to come type of thing. We're talking about the idea that in this world, once Adam ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, he has shifted his identity. Instead of saying I'm a soul with a body, I'm a body that has a soul, and that therefore only death can ultimately rectify it and bring you back to know who you are. And once they picked him up, he looked like he was dead, right? They lay him down. It's a very stark white bed. He opens up his eyes. What's the first statement he says? Am I dead? Am I dead? And Morph says, no, you're very much alive. Something's dead, something's alive. In other words, the Neo stuck in illusion is dead. And the Neo that's aware of the reality is very much alive. Our concept of reward and punishment is that when you become aware of what's alive and what's dead, after the separation of body and soul, and you become aware of how much more alive you were than you are before, you become aware of the reality. Now, if being alive is being aware if in our world being alive is being aware, being sentient, thinking, feeling, being aware of the reality. So when you die, then you become really very much alive. What's your reward and punishment is that your reward is the part of you that fits into this reality. The part of you that really fits into this new reality, this much more alive reality, where compared to what that is, all who you were before was simply in a dream. The rudimentary forms stuck in your own illusions. Then you wake up, no more dreams, no capacity for dreaming, only reality. That part of you that adjusted to reality must be very pleasurable. That part of you that is incapable of adjusting to reality must be very painful. One little part, he says, my eyes are killing me. He says, well, you never used them before. Ignoring how it would be useful at all at this point, it should have been atrophied, but okay. But he says, like, wow, something's off. So, if you never used it, and then he says you get used to it. But in our terms, the part of you that you used is usable, and the part of you that you didn't use is not usable. But it's, am I dead? Well, that's when you're really alive. You're in the total reality. How rewarding or punishing is up to each individual. And then, much later on, Morpheus' statement. It's so frum, I'll tell you. You understand? A guy comes to Aisha Torah, and we tell you all, what's one of the most successful... Can't say it.
Oh, what? Doesn't say so?
One of the most successful lies we tell you people
Not all or nothing.
is, don't worry, nobody wants you to be frum. Now, you don't have to wear a yarmulke, you don't have to come to davening, don't worry about it. We're just talking about learning it. Don't worry, all you got to do is know. The important thing in life is to know. Nobody's telling you what to do. First, somewhere you take the red pill, sometime later you say, I can't go back, can I? And somewhere along the time, some Morpheus comes around to you and puts his arm around your shoulders and says, it's not enough to know the path, you have to walk the path. Good voice, good voice. It's not enough to know the path, you have to walk the path.
With your training program.
Hopefully, Morpheus only tells you, as in the case of Morpheus only tells you, well, when he says it, you basically say, yeah, I guess I knew that. We want to be careful that no Morpheus should tell you that before you kind of gulp, turn white for a moment and say, I guess I knew that, didn't I? Right. Now, what happened at the very end, early on, when he was talking about training, he was going through the kung fu training, which is generally what keeps the dolts in the audience in their seats, because gee, that was nice, But there's a point, Morpheus says, don't worry about it. You'll get to a point where it won't make a difference. Remember something like that? And at the end, all of a sudden, at the very end, the guy's finding it. It's just like it. He's just making all the moves automatically. What's going on there? He's working so hard. I mean, it's life or death. And then at the end, the agent is going nuts. And it comes automatically. It doesn't even make it. The agent, he shoots at him. He puts up his hand, and the bullet comes slowly, and stops in air, and plop, plop, plop. What's going on? Struggling with your Yetzer Hara is very important, and you have to. You have to be very bright and wise to make war with your Yetzer Hara. But at the end, when you do it real well, you get to the point. So there's certain parts where, it isn't. Boy, it was really hard when I first started. At this point, I still fight, but X, Y, and Z is still tough, but A, B, and C, that's not really hard anymore. At a certain point where the level of clarity that you have, point says, well, I don't got to fight much about that one. That can master that one. Different levels. At a certain point it says, you know it enough so that, whatever it does is, I can handle that. You want to be careful. Not to be, it doesn't mean, it's not true for your Yetzer Hara, but on the different levels, there's certain ones where you go on to more strenuous fights. Yeah, Jay?
The jump program of the building, Is that a test of Imuna? Is that what we're talking about there?
Yeah, it's one of the tests where you fail.
Right. Knowing you're going to end up with.
No, you don't know it. No, he thought he would make it across.
You saw him do it, so of course I.
But Morpheus, no, right? So he says, okay, I know I'll make it across. My entire problem, at that point, Neo was saying, I know I'm going to make it. My entire problem is that part of me says, I won't, but I do know I will. So he jumps and he misses.
Once he looks down.
Huh?
He doesn't feel he will, so he doesn't.
There's definitely a point where he looked down, like they show him jumping, and he's like going, and then he looks, and that's when he starts feeling, It's like.
Is that the one? I don't know.
This point, though, is something I was just going to bring up, because I think there's a whole point in the movie we haven't been talking about, which is an essential part of the movie, which is that with this idea of illusions on an individual level, here's this guy in the jump program. He already knows, right, that the Matrix is an illusion. He knows that he's plugged in. He knows that it's, he just saw Morpheus jump across, and this is all over the movie. The concept that we all create our own illusions for ourselves, and even, it was only his own mind, it was only himself that was stopping him from jumping across. Like, one of my favorite lines from the movie is, there is no spoon, It's like the concept that we are so controlled by our physical environment and also by the constructs in our own minds as to what's real. Like my thinking that I can't, all kinds of boundaries we set in our own lives, and the fact that whatever it is, like no matter what it is in this world, that we can recreate those boundaries.
But that's my question, is the foundation Imuna, or not? Is that what we're testing?
No, again, because we're not saying there is no spoon. In other words, we know that both in terms of Imuna and physics, the molecules that form a spoon are in fact compressed energy. They are compressed will of God, which are meant to come across to you like a spoon. Because of the nature of the value of living in the world of illusion, because according to Judaism, you can only do mitzvahs in the world of illusion. Once you get into the world of reality, you are who you are who you are. Therefore, the great value of the world of illusion is the capacity to overcome it. And therefore, while you know that this spoon is compressed reality, but in fact, you can do a mitzvah with it based on it being the reality that you have now. It's his spoon. You can connect to God or disconnect from God based on stealing the spoon or giving it back to the owner. The fact that, in fact, this is something else entirely, this is a compressed will of God, but as it is entering your life now as a golden spoon, and you have a part of you that says, you connect to God based on working on that illusion. Not that the spoon doesn't exist, but that while I understand that it's something else entirely, but here it is a spoon, and I connect to God or not based on dealing with the golden spoon.
And how you deal with it.
Yeah. Once you die again, so that's gone, and there are no mitzvot. You can't work with the realities aren't compressed, if you will. I mean, that's a different aspect of reality. None of them are usable by you to break through your various illusions to higher reality.
Is it possible for us to break through our illusions? To live a life where we see that something's happening but it doesn't really affect us? Basically what I'm asking is it possible for us to intellectually and emotionally not be affected by things? Because often when we do things and we know they're right, it's intellectually we know it's right. We don't feel it's right. We know it's an illusion. Is it possible to reach that position where they coincide, they come together?
Well, I'm not sure if it would work in all the ways you're talking about. Like I was saying, between two different people, I would say yes, that there are some people who even when they know it's true, are still tempted by lobster, and other ones who were raised in a different way would be grossed out even considering eating that thing. So, although it's not what you did to yourself, I'm not sure, certainly, before we talk about whether you can do it to yourself, but in terms of two different people, based on where they were put in the world of illusion, in the Matrix, one person will find it a tremendous test, the other one is connected to the reality, not through his own choice perhaps, in which it just doesn't do anything, it just doesn't attract.
He's at the end, he has the bullets basically bouncing off his chest. Could we say, is it a fair statement to say that he achieved Olam Haba in Olam Hazeh? If Olam Hazeh is the world of illusion, he pretty much got to the pinnacle as far as...
There's only one world in the end anyway.
Right. but he was able to live.
That's where the Kotzker says when a Jew dies, he goes from Olam Hazeh to Olam Haba. When a tzaddik dies, he goes from one room to another. In the end, there's only one world. And the goal is to make yourself as home in the one world as it is, based on the choices you make. As he said, every tzaddik has to die because everybody has an aspect of illusion that he's incapable to break. Even the 4 tzaddikim who never sinned, they said they never did a sin, they only died because of the poison of the snake. But the poison of the snake requires death for them too. That there's a certain amount that you're off. But that the concept of the Kotzker, that when a tzaddik dies, he goes from one room to another, or one corner of the room to the other, is that to the extent that you master it, that's the aspect of the world to come that you have now and that you will have there, because it's all one world. Yeah.
I guess just to rephrase this question another way, why is it then that even with intellectual knowledge, you find a large number of college students who do spend time in yeshiva, etc., and the gross majority of people who attend Discovery Seminar, etc., never sort of make the top, and people who are there, there's a peter point where they peter out. They don't keep getting firmer. Like this from I want to be uncomfortable here.
That's what he said. That most people, that while Morpheus said we are here to liberate humanity, that humanity is enslaved.
I'm asking about
that humanity is born into bondage. But he said most people are not ready to be unplugged. Many are so dependent on the system they'll fight to protect it. We said, I don't want to go through again, we talked about the blue pill, red pill before. Most people will take the blue pill. And there's not one pill. The movie has to represent it as that point in life. But life is a continuous choice between blue pills and red pills. When you choose to take a red pill, then you're faced sometime later with another choice. Now that you've taken a red pill, do you want to take another red pill or do you want to take a blue pill this time? And we'll continue to offer throughout our lives choices of taking the blue pills or red pills. I want to go through another aspect of it, and that is the Christian part of it. In this movie, who does Neo represent? Moshiach. Now, here's where the Christian aspect comes in. That the world depends on this figure to redeem them. So at first glance you say, well, that's the mistake of the Christian, that it doesn't fit into reality. Because according to Judaism, you don't need Mashiach to redeem you. Mashiach is your reward when you redeem yourself. Perhaps the most crucial area of conflict, not crucial, that's not, probably the most clear area when you study the issue between Judaism and Christianity is in a pasuk which, well, actually you know it because you say it every day in Shachris. Uval Tzion Goel u'Lashavi Pesha B'Yakov Num Hashem. It's a pasuk from Yeshaya chapter 59, verses 19, 20. Uval Tzion Goel u'Lashavi Pesha B'Yakov Num Hashem. Does anybody want to take upon themselves to translate this verse? Uval Tzion Goel, Goel, the Redeemer, will come to Tzion. Uleshave Pesha B'Yakov, to who? Which one is hand? No. No? About illusions here, alright. Look up the rest of it tomorrow. This one I'll deal with now. Uval Tzion Goel, the Redeemer will come to Tzion. Uleshave Pesha Shav. What does Shav mean? To return. L'Shave Pesha, to those who return from their sins among the Jewish people. The Mashiach will come to Tzion, to those who return from their sins. Meaning, if you do tshuva, Mashiach will come. In Romans chapter 11 in the New Testament, Paul says, pretending to quote this pasuk, he says, and so one day all of Israel will be saved. As it says, and the translation there says, the Redeemer will come out of Zion, which is of course the reverse sense. The pasuk says he will come to Zion. He says the Redeemer will come out of Zion, because he has to believe that the Redeemer was in Zion, he comes to the rest of the world. But the second half is the ultimate fraud. The Redeemer will come out of Zion, and he will turn away sins from the Jewish people. The pasuk says that if the Jewish people do tshuva, Mashiach will come. Meaning, you have to be active in doing tshuva, and as a reward, Mashiach will come. And we know there are two ways Mashiach can come. All of them require the tshuva of the Jewish people. Either you do tshuva free willingly, or God causes a war of Gog and Magog, which will squeeze it out of you. But you have to do tshuva before Mashiach comes. Paul quotes it in a way that kind of makes sense for the Gentile world when we look at it. He says, the Redeemer will come out of Zion, and he will turn away sins from the Jewish people. Meaning, the way Paul quoted it, which is the way the Gentile world takes Christianity, is that the Mashiach will come and he will turn us away from our sins, that you can't do it yourself. It is impossible for you to do it. Mashiach has to do it for you. And so you have to throw yourself on the mercy of the court, and he has to forgive your sins. And so, while the Mashiach aspect is the Christian element, it makes sense that to a Christian world, they somehow intuit that they cannot do it, because it is true they can't. You see, from the time that God offered the Torah, remember, humanity is so stuck in illusions that it calls good evil and evil good, that you think this is you when it's your body rather than your soul. We're so stuck in illusion that God says, you have an ability to take a red pill. I can pop you out of your illusions and you can pop into reality. Do you want it? And the whole world says, no, we're taking the blue pill. Only the Jews take the red pill and say we accept Torah. And in the year 2000, 3,300 years after the giving of the Torah, we are not the descendants of those who took the red pill. Who are we?
People who kept taking the red pill.
We are the descendants of either those who kept taking the red pill or who recently took the red pill. But in the end of time, at the end of human civilization, and therefore for all eternity thereafter, those who were the Jews are those who took the red pill at Sinai, minus all those who along the way said it's not worth it anymore, who become as if they had taken the blue pill. Plus all those afterward, at the end, who, from outside, who says, got to take the red pill. From the time the Jews accepted Torah, we have the capacity to bring Mashiach, but only those who continue taking the red pill can bring it. The rest of humanity who takes the blue pill cannot do it. They are dependent on the people who take the red pill. And so it kind of makes, Christianity does make sense after all, that we cannot redeem ourselves. We depend on Mashiach. We say, well, it's not Mashiach, because Mashiach is something that comes if the Jewish people do tshuva. But what's the other title of Jesus besides Mashiach? What does he refer to? What is the phrase? What is the phrase that is used to describe Jesus in Christianity? Besides Mashiach. Not the Savior, what else? Son of God. Son of God is the perfect definition for the Gentile world who knows that it depends on the Son of God. The Gentiles say, we can't do it. We can't redeem ourselves, it depends on the Son of God. That is absolutely true. So people say, well, Son of God, is there any such thing? Is there such a thing as a Son of God according to Torah? Continually in the Torah and the prophets, there's a phrase referred to as, God refers to a son of God. God sends Moshe, says, tell Pharaoh, Israel is my son, my firstborn. Let my son go that he should serve me, and if not, I'll kill your firstborn. In the Torah, Bani matem l'Hashem Elokechem, you're the children of God. Bani really means sons, because there is no neutral term like children, sons or daughters. And in a mixed company of men and women, it takes the male aspect. You are the sons of the Lord your God. When the Jewish people misbehaved, the Torah said, Sur Yelot Chateshi, of the rock that begat you, you are unmindful. God gave birth to us and we ignored him. In Hosea, God says, when Israel was a child, I loved him, and out of Egypt I called my son. It's so basic that in the book of Matthew, in the New Testament, it talks about Jesus as a baby having his mother and father run away to Egypt because Herod wanted to kill him, and he stayed there until the death of Herod to fulfill the verse where it says, I called my son out of Egypt. Ignoring the fact that the verse says, when Israel was a child, I loved him, I called my son out of Egypt. Next verse says, the more I called to him, the more he ran away from me, sacrificing to false gods. Obviously, they don't apply that one to Jesus. But the intuitive, deep understanding is that there is a Son of God, and that the rest of the world can't do it without the Son of God. That's true. It's just that they misunderstood it as saying that he's the Mashiach, that's Jesus, and he's the one that the Jews depend on. Now, there is clearly a Son of God that the rest of the world depends on. That Son of God has to be active. Guys, can we hold till later? That guy has to be active, but the rest of humanity has to be passive. They can't do it, because what happens to everybody else depends on the Son of God. And that they're absolutely correct. It goes further, and that is because every Gentile can also choose to be relatively good or relatively evil. It makes sense that to the extent that you choose evil, you want to crucify him. That the essential goal of evil in the world is to kill him on the way. That in the goal of redeeming humanity, the goal of evil is to kill him. And that's essentially what anti-Semitism is all about. That's why Christianity comes closest to the embodiment of anti-Semitism, because evil within them want to kill the Son. And then they say, oh, why do I want to kill him? Because he killed the Son of God. Again, are you awake or are you asleep? When you wake, do you know it? They're in a process in which, remember, people who are evil always consider themselves good. Adolf Hitler considered himself good. How do they do it? By reversing the process. I'm good, and therefore they're evil. That if there's a Son of God that they're involved in trying to kill, they say, how do I justify it? I don't like them because they killed the Son of God. Interestingly enough, beyond that, although Neo is a messianic figure, he represents the Jewish model, not the Jesus model. Can you imagine that the Jesus model, he didn't know who he was. How could God not knowing who he was? According to Christianity, he always knew who he was. But Neo in the model is very much the Jewish model of the Son of God that has the capacity to redeem humanity with all of his failings and all of his failures, not even knowing who he is, till he finally at the end breaks through. He could have failed. He could have failed. But he succeeds. You're very much the one who can fail.
What made him succeed?
In the end succeeds.
He realized it. But what went into him realizing it, you know? Because lots of people think that they're the Mashiach now for
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing is that it's not just Jews. Even Christians will tell you that anybody in their neighborhood thinks he's Mashiach. I remember once a long time ago, a guy says, why didn't you believe in Jesus? And I didn't want to have a lot of time for the guy. He says, why don't you Jews believe in Jesus? I said, you believe in Jesus? He says, yeah, I believe in Jesus. I said, well, where do you live? I said, I live in Towson. But let's say you have a guy get up in Towson and says, I'm the Messiah. What do? Do you believe him or do you think he's nuts? He says, I think he's nuts. He says, well, same with us. Yeah, there's something deep down that they know there is such a figure. But why don't we believe him? Same reason you wouldn't believe it.
Yeah, there's a point where he realized that I am the one. Right?
Right. But he's not the God figure who has to always know. He's the one who comes to the awareness. That's the concept of Israel at the end. Right? Here we are already, where from the time of the giving of the Torah at Sinai till now, 95% of their descendants are now goyim. And they are no longer capable of being active in the redemption of the rest of the world. Yeah, the ideal Israel in the end will know. But from the giving of the Torah till now, 95% of those people who are the descendants of those at Sinai are part of the Gentile world who have lost their capacity to redeem humanity. They are the passive spectators waiting for the Son to do his act, to succeed, knowing that only with his success will they be redeemed. but that they can't act on them. Interestingly enough, even in terms of the movie, even as we knew in the movie that he would succeed, but it made a great show, it's the same thing for the real world. We know that the Jewish people in the end will do the tshuva necessary. If only at the end of the war of Gog and Magog, where 98% of humanity is destroyed, but in the end, the Jewish people will do what has to be done, the tshuva necessary to bring Mashiach, and humanity will have it. We already know the ending too. Still quite a show on how it gets there. But the concept of the Mashiach aspect very much came, although I did anti-missionary stuff many years ago and for a while, but the ability to see that in the movie really clarified the aspect. That there's a Mashiach aspect where most of humanity is passive. They depend on the Son of God to do it. And he can fail. It's really scary. He can fail, but he can fail over and over again, but he can't really at the end. In both cases, the script's in. Just the how and under what circumstances.
But in the Christian view, he can't fail. The Christian view says that Yeshua could fail. He's perfect.
Could fail?
He can't fail. Yeshua can't fail.
Can or cannot?
He cannot.
Neither can the Jews. The fix is in. The Torah says Mashiach will come. There are two ways Mashiach can come. Either the Jewish people do tshuva willingly, or they do tshuva under pressure.
What I'm saying is above sin, so to speak.
Right. But what I'm saying is, in the real world and in the movie, the implication was, in the end it'll work out, but he is fallible, and that's what makes it so interesting. That they don't have, although they're Christians, they don't have this thing of you can't make a movie on it, it's just not worth watching. If Neo just knows it, and he knows that he chooses to die, I mean, is there the idea that Jesus chooses to die for humanity? If you take Christian theology seriously, is there anything less sacrificial than the guy who knows that when he chooses to die, he's God of the universe? I mean, not particularly difficult choice. Many human beings do choose to die for their fellow man, but no choice would be less interesting or less of a test of character than the guy who knows that when he dies he's the king of the universe.
The fact that he was told straight up though that he wasn't who he ended up being, to me that was showing that he had. It was representing that he could have been anyone, like that quality is inside of every human being.
Yeah, again, much more of the Jewish concept of fallibility than the guy who was also God. Yeah.
Did you say that when Messiah comes, he'll help to redeem some people, the portion of humanity that weren't able to do it themselves?
Yeah, the Goyim.
They're not capable of. There's a question of free will.
That free will is essentially necessary. The idea that Barasi Yetzirah, I created an evil inclination, Barasi Torah, I created Torah as its antidote. Yeah, the world that isn't connected is overwhelmingly frozen out of free will. Not totally, but overwhelmingly frozen out.
Are you saying we're the only ones who really have free will?
Again, two totally different levels of free will. Where one was much more rudimentary and the other one's much more wide-ranging. No.
We are going to have free will like we do. How can we expect them to do the 7 nullified laws, which are generally moral things, and we can expect that of them and of their society? We're so disgusted by cannibalism, and that's why we're so disgusted by it.
Because that they can do.
It's fine for them to
But
do.
Right, if they can have an aspect of free will by choosing the basic realities.
They haven't sinned then.
What?
They haven't sinned. They didn't know it was wrong.
Huh?
They haven't sinned. They didn't know it was wrong. You said they have no free will.
No. Again, I don't have to keep on going through again. I said there are two different levels of free will. Right? Just that. By the way, two statements that the agent. What was his name? I don't know if he had a name. The agent, Mr. Smith. Really? Billions of people living out their lives oblivious. Yeah. Number one, most of human beings the mass of men lead their lives with quiet desperation. There's a certain aspect of desperation, but it's quiet, it's stifled, right? He loses his mouth, most of humanity, and they just go out, and that's the end of them. Oblivious. And then he said, you realize that you human beings, you're not mammals. Mammals don't settle like that. Mammals are very much at home, sensible with the surrounding environment. What are you? A virus. Find the world so irrelevant to them. The mammals are so much at home with the physical world, and the viruses are not at all. Yeah, it's a difference.
Whether they're even alive or not.
It's a difference. But there is a difference between the people who are mammals and the people who are souls. The mammals are in a symbiotic relationship with nature. Souls are not, like the irrelevance of nature as well. Abraham says to God, I saw from the astrologers that I can't have children. Say, achutza, get out of it. Go outside. You're outside of the natural restrictions.
Yes.
The mammals are stuck to natural restrictions. You're not subject to natural restrictions.
You're above nature. And that's the very fact that disgusts them the most, he said.
Yeah, that's what disgusts them the most. You're just not mammals. Yeah.
It's the whole thing on morality. That's what I took from this. Was you people are into morality, and you're the very thing I'm against.
Yeah, the animals. You can understand the animals. You can't understand the people who don't interact with the environment in that way. 3 basic points of the difference between the real world and the Matrix. The world as it really is. Number one, I mentioned before that in the real world, the Matrix is much more powerful. It wins with nobody shooting at you. Now, in the movie, you have the guys coming after you, and they try to shoot, and they try to beat you up, and they try to... Now, I'm not saying that wasn't like that in the past, but now the Matrix is such a powerful device. In the movie, they try to come and shut him up. They try to catch him, try to get a hold of him. In the real world, what do they? The Matrix is the system. What do they call the one behind it?
Yeah, AI.
That's it. In the real world, the Matrix is so powerful that it says, "Go ahead. You can build an Aisha Torah. Go tell people. Go on the internet. Go ahead. I'll give you a shot. See whether it'll make much of a difference, but go ahead." In the real world, AI is much more confident than it is in the movie.
One last AI?
Much more confident. Without fighting the most of humanity, without fighting us at all, most people are not ready to be unplugged. Many are so dependent that they'll fight against us to protect it. Another important point is that they keep on talking in the movie about freeing humanity. Freedom, freedom, freedom. Eric Fromm points out, question, freedom from what? Freedom for what? Nobody, in the movie they're talking about freeing humanity. For what? Who are you that when you're free you then accomplish X? The lowest levels of human civilization, those of rank idolatry, are capable of getting beyond the wimpy model of the movie. Freedom. Every group of Goyim, forget about Jews, ask, how do I use my freedom? And if they got the wrong gods, but at least they understand. Freedom for greatness, freedom for connecting into reality. They have a problem, they think it's reality, it's an illusion. But they're not so empty-headed as the people who are saying, I'm fighting for the freedom, liberate human beings from the machine. For what? What are human beings but another type of biological machine? To free you from slavery into the reality of meaninglessness. So, for what point? Why do you think it's so easy to enslave you? Because your existence has no intrinsic meaning anyway, so what are you going to liberate them for? That's why they walk into it. They didn't have to be chained by the machines in the real world. They walked into it because, what's the point? So what are you going to tell them? What's the point of your being here? In the movie, nobody asks. You're asking who created the Matrix. That's a very good question. Who created now that you know Matrix is illusion, now look at the reality. Who created the reality? Doesn't have the guts to ask the question. And finally, in the movie, Keanu Reeves is the hero. He struggles against illusion and he's working for reality. But just to get us back to how powerful the Matrix is, in the real world is much more powerful than the one in the movie. In the movie, Keanu Reeves is our hero. He's fighting for the liberation of humanity. But in real life, he's an actor, which means he's working for the Matrix, and he's one of his best agents. Wake up into another illusion when you walk out of the movie. Keanu Reeves is the hero. In the real world, he's working for the Matrix. He does a great job, too, maintaining the value of illusions. The villain in the movie says, make me somebody important like an actor. In the real world, that's what Keanu Reeves' goal in life was. Make me somebody important like an actor. But we can really feel he's doing it for us. He's our hero. Yeah, much more complicated Matrix. Yeah.
Given everything we said about the movie, then it seems very clear that then the best thing we can possibly do then, in terms of, in terms of breaking up the Matrix, is then, sitting and learning, really getting ourselves to the point where we see things on the clearest level, rather than running around trying to unplug everyone else. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Just you can't unplug everyone else. You can't. You can't unplug everyone else.
Or even trying to.
What you can say, but what you can do is say, don't worry, nobody's asking you to be religious. Just find out about life. In the end, everybody has to unplug themselves.
Thank you for listening to ClassicSinai.com. We hope that you have enjoyed this class. For other free classes, just return to ClassicSinai.com. If you feel that your friends and family would appreciate this class, click on our easy Send to a Friend link. Shalom from the Western Wall.